Welcome to the SAMSN webinar series. This is webinar 2. My name's Gary and I'm here with Rachel here today. We're at the SAMSN headquarters in Sydney. It's Darug country. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands in which we're meeting, thank them for caring for the lands and the peoples upon it, and acknowledge the debt we owe to elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge all those people with lived and living experience of childhood sexual abuse and sexual assault, and thank them for providing us with information and support that helps us improve our services and support survivors and anybody impacted by childhood sexual abuse. Today we're going to talk very much about impacts and ways of managing. But before we start, I just invite you once again to prioritise your well-being in watching the video. Recognise you can pause it at any time. Just prepare yourself, make sure it's a space that you feel comfortable to listen to this material. It might be there's enough privacy for you and that you've got a comfortable environment for you. But at the same time, recognise that you might want to take a break, go outside, make some notes so that you don't feel you've got to carry this information around. And as I say, it's very much there for you to come back to as you need. And then afterwards, definitely encourage you to go for a walk and do some things which connect you with your environment and the people who are around with you. So talking about effects, one of the things we're aware of is there's multiple effects people can have, and that's very much what might be impacted by the way people experience the abuse and the supports around them. Everybody is different. There's no one thing that you can say happens to everybody, and so it's really important to recognise there'll be a diversity of responses to people's experiences. Having said that, what we know is that if a child's, the younger a child is, the more invasive the abuse, whether it's somebody who is in a caring role that's harming them, or if there's multiple offenders, and if there's an opportunity for them to speak and be supported or not be supported, will all shape how they respond to the experience of abuse. The more isolated they are, the more likely and more impactful the abuse might be. Having said that, we know that there might be a single event for some people that is absolutely devastating for their life and shattering of their life and will impact and shape their world going forward. What we do know about effects is if people do have appropriate support, then that's definitely going to assist them in better managing the experience of abuse. So I might now talk a bit more about the multiple effects that people can have from childhood sexual abuse. So what we're aware of is that it can impact people in many ways, and probably what you've heard of a bit more is the psychological impacts. We've talked about increased anxiety, people being frustrated and angry a bit more, maybe having mental health difficulties, having post-traumatic stress, experiencing post-traumatic stress, maybe becoming quite depressed. And those are all real, and there is impacts that people can have and struggle with. But what we learned with the Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Sexual Abuse is that sexual abuse can have multiple effects across a person's lifespan. And probably the kind of major thing is it can impact people's sense of self. How they understand themselves, they can, because of what happened, because of the way the perpetrator invited them to feel responsible, they can blame themselves, they can have a diminished sense of self-worth, a bit of self-belief, which makes it difficult to navigate the world because they always feel that they're having to prove themselves or they're always struggling with things and to be heard. And so that impact on sense of self is really quite key. And recognise this can kind of play out across the lifespan in relationships, in going for work or certain jobs, just in confidence in social settings, and that's really important. So other parts that we're aware of, and recognising when I said across the lifespan, these can appear at different times. Mm-hmm. So it might be as we get older, we get into relationships, there's more closeness, intimacy, and there's conversations with partners. And because abuse happened in a relationship context, relationships can be challenging.
I think we find often when the supporters are coming in for counselling that there are some very common points,
Yeah.
like entering into a relationship, when a relationship's in crisis, or when children are born.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that all of those kind of shape, and it's because of that history of abuse and harm that that sometimes there's this, sometimes, and particularly when there's the secret, nobody knows about this, guys will struggle with, should I tell her? Should I not tell her about, or tell him about what's happening before? So they've always got these questions, and that very much shapes how they respond, and really when you're not feeling good about yourself, it's very difficult to interact in a relationship in a confident way at times. And so that's one of the kind of impacts, and that's why we've got a separate webinar about relationships and relationship challenges, and that's webinar 3, and they'll be coming after this webinar. But also we need to recognize that you can, because of, nobody wants to think about this stuff, sometimes you can get involved with drink, with drugs, people can get into addictive patterns. And one of the challenges is that as a young man growing up in late teens, early 20s, people go out, they party, they do drink, it's part of being social. But one of the challenges is you can find yourself doing this faster and harder than other people, and becomes quite a pattern sometimes, and because it's quite useful sometimes to numb and to not think about what happened.
One of the other couple of these that we have coming forward, I guess, are people accessing pornography a lot, gambling behaviours. You'd put them in that same kind of numbing area, Gary?
Yeah, and it's that stuff of, anything to distract you from thinking about this, from what's going on in your head, for that negative chatter sometimes around that. So sometimes these things just give people a break. But one of the challenges with the drink and drugs in particular is the moment you stop, the memories come back, and they don't come back like it was yesterday, like it was like 5 years ago or 25 years ago. It come back like it was yesterday. And people are struggling with the resources to deal with that. They can have emotional spikes, they'll have nightmares, they have difficulty sleeping, and they really struggle with their sense of who they are and how to manage these things, especially when you haven't told anybody. And so that's really challenging.
And those ones are easier to spot. And if you have something like workaholism and somebody's always going to work, you might not necessarily think, oh, okay, that's a strategy, or but that keeping busy all the time so that your mind doesn't have a chance to relax and think about what happened. Yeah,
and one of the things is that's something that's rewarded. It's you get a bit of money, and as a bloke, you're meant to work hard. You're meant to be, put in the yards, be it physically, mentally, wherever it is. That's really a challenge then, because this might even become your identity, and that's so true for men. So that sense of identity through work. What else can happen as well is a challenge is that this abuse happens often when that childhood, in those early teen years, and what that means is you're often at school. And it becomes really difficult to concentrate at school, to hold on to information, to even if it's happening in school, to go into that school, which means that sometimes kids will, get in a bit of trouble or be outside of the school and our school system, which means you leave school without a school certificate. Which means that then your educational opportunities are diminished going forward, like going into university, which means that the kind of jobs you'll get will be different. And so that might then mean kind of physical jobs where you kind of have to physically work hard, and then obviously all the impacts then on your body from doing that kind of work. So all those things. Having said that, some people find education a place of safety and reward. They will lock in and they will be rewarded, and they will become very, very good, and they'll be high performers.
So you're saying that people will often go to where they're safe and invest their time there as children. So if they're unsafe at home, then they're going to be safer at school.
And if you're getting the reward at school and it's something you can control, like I put this in, I get that result, I get the rewards of that, and that gives me an ability to get on or even escape from this environment, then some people will do that. So there's no kind of one way to do this. Some people do that. Jobs can be good, very, very rewarding. Sometimes, FIFO is a great job. You can get away. And there's other kind of jobs which are doing that. But it's also recognizing people who've experienced abuse are actually overrepresented in child protection. They're overrepresented in police, in the army, those sort of places, because sometimes that fits with that man role of being quite, taking control, protecting others. And so, this is not all, like they're only in one group. They're very much in lots of other groups. So what we're also aware of is that, like staying connected and building relationships is really important in all of this. But the sense of isolation is really struggles with the guys. And what guys will do is they will question going to, looking after themselves physically. So what happens is they're very reluctant to go to doctors. And going to people like dentists, because what happens for them is that those people will touch them, they'll ask questions about them, and the result of not going to your doctor or not having a good GP to connect in with is the fact is that then things aren't picked up early enough. It's quite common to have heart difficulties, to have stomach difficulties in amongst all this.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the supporters like to then go and support their partners, their survivors, with their appointments. Like they go to the doctor with them, they go to the dentist with them, and they help regulate them so that they can attend.
Absolutely, and that's what you want. That's one of the ways that partners can be really supportive of that. And I might talk about that a bit more later. I'm just going to talk about a few things which are really quite, I suppose, challenging in the sense of that we know that there's some kind of overrepresentation for guys in some difficult places. And so one of the things we know that is that for men, there's a high risk of suicide. And that's for men in general. 7 to 8 out of 10 of all suicides are related to are males. But for males who've experienced childhood sexual abuse, this is even higher. We do have a bit of a picture nowadays. Sorry, I'll just check my notes here, so I have to make sure I cover everything. We do have a picture nowadays of what some of the impacts are for men and how we might manage them. So what we know is the more a man's isolated and it blames himself and feels alone in this, that's a higher risk of suicide. And so one of the things we know is then getting a man connected in with important people is really important. We know the more the man blames himself and has low self-esteem and feels shame for what happened, then the more likely he's going to be at risk of suicide. And so really dealing with that self-blame, recognizing he was a child. This should never have happened to him. He should have been safe as a child, and it's not him that should carry responsibility. It's not him should carry the shame. We know also that men struggle with emotions because, as a man, big, strong man, you have to manage all those things. And so the more he's kind of emotionally elevated, the more he's highly anxious, those can increase risk. So supporting him to get better assistance in managing strong emotions is important. We know that use of alcohol and drugs increases his risk, but also we know that a loss of hope is something that really men can struggle with. And so that sense of being connected in with people and working with people and holding on to a sense of hope and change is really important.
Hope and social support, you know. And that support of other men who have lived experience. So, in the SAMSN 8-week groups, connecting on our peer support phone line to expand that space around the survivor, so it's not just the supporter, it's other people, and other people have lived experience is a really good place to start.
And I think that's one of the things for us to kind of always hold on to that sense of, because while we can't change what happened, what we can do is, and now we're now talking about it, we can now start to sort some things out and improve the man's future and the relationship around him and those people that are important to him. I should actually mention here, and I'll talk a little bit more after we've gone to some questions and answers. What I'd say is that what we now know is the more man is being invested in being a big, strong man, who's that traditional masculine role, the more they are at risk of suicide. And so that kind of, what happens is guys become very constrained by these things, and often they won't seek help, etc. Because of this, it increases their risk, but also they become very brittle. So it's either going very well, and their temptation is to kind of screw the lid on the pressure cooker down more and more and more, and then there's the kind of, there's no release for any of this, and then they can feel quite overwhelmed, and then that's when they think of exiting through suicide. So we do take that very seriously, and we want to kind of reiterate it's really important when hear a man talking about those things that we take them seriously and make sure he gets the help and linked into to who he needs to talk with.
So what you're saying is that seeking help goes against that masculinity box that they're kind of put in. So we want to help people to be able to step outside that and offer help and support so that they can see that there are other options. And
I think that's one of the things, the walking with a mate, being with somebody is really, really key around that. Also, having spoken about this, I think one of the things also for many supporters, everybody's be aware of, is the fact is that things can come up in your everyday life which just can be a reminder and produce triggers and flashbacks for many guys, which can be quite sweeping away of where we are in the world. We find ourselves back there thinking about the abuse, and we can lose time thinking about that. One of the things is that guys are meant to be big and strong, not show any kind of vulnerability, and so it's very, very difficult for them. And the whole experience of the abuse and the kind of impacts on people's lives, that sense of distress that it produces, etc. It's really important that we recognise that these things can happen in the present. It's not just about the past, and sometimes they can have a trauma response.
Yeah.
And that trauma response, people may have heard of that. It's that fight, flight, freeze response, and traditionally what happens is when people are feeling attacked, what they'll do is they might fight back, they might run away. That's what saves your life, but also what saves your life sometimes is just freezing and closing down. And so that is a trauma response that many men really struggle with. Because as a bloke, you're meant to fight, and I've heard guys tell me, "Oh, but I should have run away. I was fast, I was bright, I could have done this," and they bring that sense of judgment really to a 10-year-old who was probably just doing the best they could.
Yeah, they think with the adult man mind and brain, not the child, not the 10-year-old who didn't have that capacity.
And I think one of the things about that is recognizing that response and not beating yourself up on that response, but also that can get played out a bit in adult life. When you get close to this stuff, people can push back. People can miss appointments. They can kind of just want to take themselves off, like the runaway thing, or can they just freeze, just not knowing what to do. And so recognizing, supporting people to manage that better is an important part of working with men and being with men. And hopefully we'll put up a little video there for people to be able to access from Phoenix, Australia, which we encourage you to look at, and that talks about the fight, flight, freeze response. So I want to finish on something that's really important and really isn't talked about much, which is the understanding, which we've really had now for 25, 30 years, and it kind of makes sense in the long term, is that what many people talk about is what we call post-traumatic growth. What happens is some people who've experienced abuse and harm, none of them wanted it to happen or feel good about it happening. But what they talk about is how that shaped their lives in many ways. Many might be negative impacts, but it's had other impacts on them. They've spoken about having gone through this, having gone to this place of despair and desperation. They have a greater appreciation of life, a greater appreciation of connected, close relationships, of supporting people and wanting to support people and be there for people. They have an increased personal resilience, and that kind of might not fit with people, but what we know is if you've experienced trauma and you've got through it and worked out what happens and how you can manage things.
And worked out how you survived and this personal strength that you had, that it took to get to that point of survival.
And how to get back on your feet, how to manage difficult situations, then if another trauma or something bad happens, you're in a better place than somebody who's had no difficulties in their life at all, because you know how to manage things. You know how to get on back on your feet and get on with life. And you know, that kind of makes sense in a long term. So it's really, nobody's saying it's good that this happened, but guys, speak about that ability to manage stuff. And you know, I always talk about, you know, like if shit goes down, I kind of want some of these guys standing with me.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And one of the things also is, what we don't want to do is avoid problems, because then we have a little life. What we want to do is recognize that we have the capacity to manage things. That we can learn how to get back on our feet quicker. And that's one of the things we know with post-traumatic growth. Guys talk about increased compassion for others who's struggling, and a wish to give back, a wish for real altruism. They talk about utilizing these strengths that they've learned and sharing those strengths. And really reevaluation of life priorities. Sometimes people change jobs, they take on different roles, be it because of their, you know, their age now, but also recognize that they felt it's more important to connect and work and help people. And we need to honour that. And also there's a lovely side as well. Guys talk about creative growth. So they might get into the arts a bit, they might learn to kind of practice certain things. And so really engaging with the world in a creative way. And that's a really important part. And I kind of want to finish on a quote, which is from a guy who's experienced childhood sexual abuse. And his name's Toby. And Toby says, taking a negative experience and trying to do something with that either improves your lives or the lives of the others, if possible, I think growth can come from that mindset. And I think that's a great way to kind of pause for us now here.
That's lovely. Thanks, Gary.
Hello, I'm Jill. I'm a counsellor at SAMSN.
And hi, I'm David. I'm also a counsellor at SAMSN. And today we've got a few questions about the impacts that supporters are facing. So the first question that we have is, why is he so reactive? Is this a common response to trauma?
Yeah, absolutely. And for trauma survivors, as you saw in that video just before about the fight, flight, freeze response, becoming dysregulated or just reacting can be a very common response for a survivor. And building on what we learned about in that earlier video, actually talking about something which is very relevant for survivors but also supporters is what's called the window of tolerance. And it is like a window, if you can visualize a window. When we're in our window of tolerance, we are feeling calm, we can deal with most things that life throws at us, we can deal with uncomfortable feelings, we can kind of get through the day. But for a survivor who has experienced trauma, often that window of tolerance can be a lot smaller. So that means it doesn't take much for them to maybe go into that fight or flight, which is overwhelm, maybe get angry, feelings of anger, reacting in a certain way, feeling very emotional. That can happen quite easily, or they could go down into that freeze. Maybe they withdraw, maybe they are numb, don't want to talk, walk away and sort of withdraw themselves from their family, their partner, for example. So what's important to understand around that is there is hope in relation to the window of tolerance, and by learning strategies such as grounding, mindfulness, all those things, it's possible to expand the window of tolerance and for a survivor to heal from that, and they can start to learn things that they can do in those moments when they're feeling overwhelmed, such as some deep breathing, such as even connecting with a pet, or if they've got an animal, you've got an animal in the house that they can connect with, finding things that work for them, that they can learn skills to actually start to widen that window of tolerance. And the other aspect that I would also talk about is something that's called co-regulation. So that's where part of our nervous systems, so as human beings, we co-regulate with each other. So you may notice when maybe your partner or family member is becoming anxious or they've reacted in a certain way, you may feel you start to feel that way too. So by understanding that, it can be really helpful for you as a supporter to say, I can feel that my heart's racing. Maybe my breathing's got a little bit fast. What can I do in this moment too to help me feel calmer, to help me regulate my nervous system? Because by doing that, that can help you support the survivor in your life too. So all those skills are really helpful. It's important to find the things that work for you in that moment, and also for your survivor to do the same. And we have some resources on our website that you can actually have a look at maybe after the webinar and find the things that work for you. So moving on from that, that's just following up from that question. The next one that we have had from our supporters: I'm struggling to cope with my partner, family members' behaviours, such as, for example, substance use, gambling, use of pornography, workaholism. How can I deal with this?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. Thank you, Jill. So, we would start off by normalizing the experience and exploring this with your partner, trying to understand why it is that they're retreating into these behaviors, and discuss how these sort of behaviors, they can be numbing, they sort of escape, numbing themselves, self-soothing, and it's a way of coping for many guys, but it's also these behaviors that you want to voice your concern about that may not be desirable behaviors that you're wanting to sort of change, or get an understanding as to why he's using it. The use of non-judgmental questions and strategies to talk about how these behaviors are impacting you is a really good way to do that, and just slowing that conversation and sort of talking to your own feelings without sort of passing a judgment, without sort of making him feel vulnerable or embarrassed by these behaviors. Because a lot of survivors, retreat into their own types of behaviors, and that's part of the experience that we are wanting to support you with as well. So the next question that we have here, Jill, is my partner or family member is blaming me for how they are feeling and the impacts on their life. How do I address this with them or cope with this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really tough one, and I think it is, you're absolutely right. It's one we hear from our supporters. I think the first thing is that the impacts of trauma on each survivor are different, and everyone's a different person and they experience it in many different ways, and maybe then how the supporter in their life experiences that is very different. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that, and also the role of a supporter, making sure that you're getting the support for yourself. Well, of course, you want to be there for your survivor in your life, but you also need to get support for yourself and get your needs met. So really having that in your mind too. It can be very helpful to reach out for support, such as, for example, SAMSN do offer counselling for supporters. So that may be a safe space where you could maybe explore some of that and explore in more detail some strategies that could help you cope with some of those behaviours. Think about boundaries, or also known as maybe limits in how what behaviours are acceptable to you in the relationship with your partner or the person that you are supporting. Have a think about that and what your needs are. So you go into that. You can think about having a sort of a calm conversation with them at an appropriate time around what's going on in that moment and how that is impacting you too, or other family members. Of course, acknowledge, validate their experience. That's really important. But also make sure you think about what your needs are, because I think having that as well can really help you to, regulate your nervous system, help you be calm in that moment and have that conversation so that you can kind of work together more on moving forward with some of these challenges. So I think that's a good segue to the next question actually, David, and we're talking about, thinking about that and thinking about the person that you're supporting, how can I encourage them, my partner, the family member, to actually reach out for some professional or peer support, if I'm seeing they're struggling, I want to help them, but also how can I encourage them to reach out?
Yeah, no, great question, Jill. Thank you. So we know that men isolate themselves, and the isolation plays a part in not wanting to seek out these supports. It's the sort of shame response that we see. And research has shown, and from what we know, is that having social supports, they can be the antidote to isolation or not seeking support. So, by engaging in these supports, they sort of stop these self-isolating or shame responses. So support such as our 8-week groups is a way that the guys can connect in and have that support, and as well as our peer support phone line. There's a lot of guys on there that connect in with us. So recommending those supports for your partner to engage with and having a chat with us about how we can help connect them to their healing journey, because starting that is, the key to getting things going for them. So, we want to, your partner better than we do, and we would like you to, refer them through to us and have a chat to start that, because, speaking with them about their supports is one of the key elements here. So our next sort of question here, Jill, is my partner or family member has been saying that they've had enough. I'm really worried about them. What should I do?
Okay, that's a really good question. And we, I think it's so important to, really take those sort of comments seriously. When your partner is or family member is saying things like that, then, really validate their experience, really acknowledge their experience. But also on the flip side, saying to yourself, this person in my life, you know them better than anybody, you have that relationship with them. If you're really worried, it's really important to reach out for some support around that. So if you're really concerned about their safety, it's important to reach out to 000, and don't fear doing that. If you really feel your instincts are telling you that something's not right and they're not safe, then reach out. But if you feel it's not got to that level and you want to just reach out for some support or just someone to talk to around that, then, maybe a GP, maybe get your partner or your family member, encourage them to go and see the GP, or services such as Lifeline. Lifeline provides could provide support to the survivor, but also provides a good service to supporters as well. So if you're concerned, they're 24/7, give them a call. They've got some good resources on their website, but they'll also support you to maybe work through a bit of a safety plan for the survivor in your life, so that you can then feel comfortable that you've got a bit of a plan for, if you're concerned and you're feeling they're unsafe. Being with the survivor in your life at that moment, encouraging them, supporting them, continuing to do what you do, but also knowing that there are services out there that can help you, and it's okay to reach out. If you're not sure, reach out and get some help. Don't be afraid to do that, because that's really, really important. The other aspect is looking after yourself, because that could be quite distressing if your partner or your family members saying things like that. So also get some support for yourself too. That's really important as well. So thinking about that and just moving on to that, people keep saying to me that I need to look after myself as well. This is from a supporter perspective. Why is this important, David?
Yeah, so as you're sort of alluding to there, Jill, self-care is an important part of being able to support yourself and then also being there for your partner. You can't sort of take that on board without looking after yourself. This is some tricky space and heavy emotional conversations. So, self-care is an important part of being able to have those conversations. So you can look at ways that have worked for you in the past. So, what you have found comfort in or what you have found important. And these can be things such as calming type of techniques like deep breathing or grounding. And then, looking to connection as well through, socialization, or as you mentioned earlier, Jill, pets are a really good one. An animal connection is another good way of maintaining a good, healthy connection. And attention techniques such as engaging in mindfulness or meditation, they're also ways of looking after yourself. And then discharge techniques such as exercise, yoga, things that sort of get you up and moving, ways that you can help cope with this as well. And also looking after yourself, keeping that front of mind. Our website has some resources around this and some in-depth videos and techniques about how you can look after yourself. So we suggest you have a look at that and check that out. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about masculinity and manhood. In Australia in 2025, it's kind of a bit of a topic at the moment. And recognising that men we live with very much live in our culture and our environment. And growing up as a boy or a man, there's a lot of pressures about how they're meant to act or be in the world. And that kind of can shape their responses around experience of abuse and harm. And it's very much those ideas of traditional masculinity, that they need to be strong and powerful, that they need to be self-reliant, stoic and in control at all times. They need to be rational, logical, emotionally contained, just, holding everything together.
So not showing any emotions.
Not showing any emotions.
Quite the opposite to what we get people to do in counselling.
Yes. and that's one thing. So you feel like you're not familiar, you haven't got the language to talk about these things, because as a bloke, that's not what you do. You just get on and you do. And, one of those things is you work hard. And it's not just mentally hard, you work physically hard. You need to be a big, strong bloke. You're meant to be, up for state, kind of chasing to be better in your job, or to have those positions, where you're a provider or a protector, but action-based, doing things. So, sitting and thinking probably isn't rewarded as much as acting and doing. And, as much as anything as well, you're expected to be straight and have it all together, and always interested in sex. Let's kind of be clear about that. Yeah. One of the things about abuse, though, is in the sense of, if you're meant to be big, strong, powerful, etc., there's no room for you to talk about being vulnerable. There's no room for men to be a victim. It stands against this idea of how a man's meant to be in the world. Yeah. And that really impacts guys. It feels they can't talk because people are going to question who they are as a man. Not just about as a person, but as a man, and how they should be. And then naming some of those things, because there's been a lot of discussion about masculinity nowadays. One of the things is, I want to say there's nothing wrong with those qualities that we've discussed. There's nothing wrong with being, in control, logical, being able to, manage difficult situations, being strong, being self-reliant. Yeah.
These positive aspects of masculinity, and protective.
Yes. And those things, and also women can be all of those things as well.
Absolutely they can.
And those are really good. But one of the things, but you could be living half a life. Because what isn't traditionally there is that acknowledgement of difficulties, that caring role, that showing compassion, those being there for other people, to be in certain roles. One's allocated. Man's meant to be strong, doing certain jobs, and certain jobs aren't for men, or things like that. And so what we want to do, and what we kind of suggest, is that we want to expand the possibilities for guys in a sense of increase what it does to me being a man, so that you can be both a carer and a protector. That you can be there for people, and you can talk about the things you've struggled with. Yeah. That you can say, I'm not going well at the moment, and you not feel judged by that, but that you'll be there, and you can be there for your mates. Yeah. And you can be there for a partner. And the reason why I think it's really important to kind of talk about this is that we know for men in general, this is not men who've experienced abuse, men in general, they don't access support. They don't go to the GP regularly. Their mental health literacy is not good at all. That we drink more, yeah? We do drugs more. Our diets are shit compared to some women, yeah? We don't look after ourselves the way that we can. Sometimes even when we're doing the gym and the physical stuff, we drive ourselves so hard that we produce injuries. We don't
I was just thinking about that, because there are some men who are really focused on that, muscle building, strength building, really strong, eating really healthy, but that has both positive and negative impacts as well on relationships.
And they can overtrain, and they can get even bigger and strong. And it kind of appeals to you, if you experience abuse, of course it's appealing to you to be seen as big and strong, because that means it'll never happen again. Yeah? That's what you'll look after yourself. So of course guys might kind of gravitate to that. But where's the care and kindness? In that. So what we're saying is all of these things are available. So we want to expand the opportunities for guys and support them to manage strong emotions, to express compassion and care, and to be there for all their friends. And that's not a weak thing. That's a sign of strength.
Yeah.
It's a sign of courage as well to stand alongside at difficult people at difficult times and to say, I'm not coping. Yeah, that's a sign of strength as much as anything.
I think for a lot of the supporters, that having somebody say, I'm not coping, is one of the things that is rare, you know, and they want to ask the questions about, how do I know when he's not coping? What can I see? You know, what behaviours am I going to see so that then I can help, or I can offer to help? Yeah.
And one, you know, it's one of the things guys do because they're very, you know, focused on being strong, etc. They worry if they open that can of worms, they might not have it all together. They might start crying. And, you know, guys don't, you know, you're not meant to express emotions except when your team wins the grand final. But you're meant to do that and to cry. And let's not think this is a thing of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. The reality is you talk to young people today, you talk to children, they know by the time they hit grade 1 that as a boy, you're not meant to cry. If you start crying in the school ground, people will be paying out on you. Yeah. And one of the things I would say is one of the dangers with this is we know that if you got by the time of 5 or 6, a boy learns not to show emotions, knows not to cry. We know boys, you know, learn to lie a bit more earlier, yeah, maybe because they're getting up to stuff, which is fun. But if you've got that, so by the age of 7 or 8, what better gift have you given an offender that a child isn't going to keep the secret and they're not going to show emotion. Yeah? And so one of the things is it's understanding these are the things that are kind of, these are cultural things. This is not a failing of the man. Of course he has that capacity, but it's a learned thing. And
it's the way we socialise boys.
Yes. And so how can we expand that option so boys can talk about what's going on for them, the good and the bad, the difficulties they struggle with. So I just want to kind of wrap it up a bit more and saying that in relation to men who've experienced childhood sexual abuse and sexual assault, we actually do know now what men find useful and what helps them not just cope better, but get on in life and thrive in their life. So we know that the more men have some relevant information which speaks to them and their experiences, that helps them reduce that sense of self-blame and shame, is absolutely paramount. The more they can build supportive, positive connections and assist with, you know, people who care for them, who can help them, is really important. And also the more that they can address those impacts and kind of not just about what's going on in their head, but also physically feel more connected to themselves and getting on. And I should say, this is not all about talking therapy. Yeah? There's things we know. Yoga is a really good thing for people to do. It gives you space to calm yourself. Yeah, mindfulness may or may not be the thing for you. You know, fishing and just reflecting with a friend might be the better option.
Going for a walk and getting a coffee.
Yeah,
you know, just
getting connected,
having some kind of connection. Yeah.
And I think that's really important to understand. So what we're talking about is expanding men's repertoire of tools, you know, in your toolbox, building their capacity to manage difficult situations, and all of us are up for that. That works for all of us.
And this is where we're talking about supporters coming in and offering this. Do you want to go for a walk? Do you want to have a coffee? And this is not just you know, intimate partners. This is family members. This is mates. You know, this is all the people who are around the survivors. You know?
And I think one of the key points there is what we hear from men is that it's not just they don't need to always see a specialist counsellor. They might want to talk with their partner or friend in a way that's supportive, and the quality of that response, if that's a good response, that may be enough for some guys. And so that having a good response from somebody they care about and they're close to is really helpful. Talking with someone who's experienced a similar difficulty, and this is why peer support, mates, you know, this is a really good way to work. And groups men find helpful. It helps alleviate that sense of shame and self-blame because they're not going to dump it on another bloke. They learn to take care and be there for other men, and they really value that.
That's some of the strongest feedback we get at SAMSN from the peer support that we provide, is that you can straight away talk to someone who gets it.
Yeah.
You know, and the shame is almost not like it's always a little bit present when you're struggling, but it's not as present. You know, it's not there getting in the way.
And I think just to finish on that, what we also know is hope is so important.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely, and that sense of being compassionate for others or with others, but also having self-compassion. Men are so quick to judge themselves as kids about what they did or didn't do. And so bringing self-compassion to understand that kid did the best they could to get through what was happening for them at that time, and to bring that around, that sense of generosity, sense of kindness, sense of compassion to the child who's been harmed, and also for the man in the future, because you're going to do much better if you're encouraging of yourself, if you're encouraging of others, than if you're criticizing and having that negative headspace. So the more we can be in that hopeful, encouraging space and building capacity, that works for all of us. It's ability for us to manage things.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for supporters as well. So many of the things that guys find helpful, which is connecting in with other people, talking with people who are going to be supportive and encouraging of them, practicing that, having an awareness of what are signs of stress for you and how you best manage and reconnect that's important for you. Not being, putting pressure on yourself, releasing that kind of pressure valve a bit, and really working together to resolve problems and finding people you can work with and are helpful for you. That's a real kind of encouraging. It's like that post-traumatic growth. Experience.
And trying different ways. Not one way of connecting isn't for everybody.
No.
So try different ways.
And not everybody needs to know everything about people's experiences, and you just have that multiple sites. I always talk about multiple sites of engagement, multiple sites of connection, because we need to have many options for ourselves, and expanding those options are really, really valuable. So we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for listening to webinar 2.